Hey, this is Heidi Dawson. If you love all things health and wellness and style of any kind, hang out here with me each week. I'm obsessed with never-ending improvement, and it's all in an effort to help each one of us live a wildly successful lifestyle. Subscribe today so you don't miss a thing.
Hi, guys. Welcome to episode 257 of the Wildly Successful Lifestyle Podcast. So I was running about a month or so ago, and it was super hot, and I was sort of running out of steam when I saw a sign in a yard of one of our neighbors about 1.5 miles away from our house. Now, it was a political sign, and it actually said, "Keep Heidi Kuhn in Congress," or something like that. But that's not what I saw. I saw what I wanted to see, and what I saw was "Keep Heidi running." Now, my brain at first was jolted and was like, who would put that sign up? That's crazy. But almost immediately, I recognized what it actually said, and I had a good laugh at myself. I mean, like someone would make a sign, know when I was running, and then put it up in their yard for my benefit. Quite literally 0% chance of that happening. So my perception was one thing, and the reality was something altogether different. Now, another time, and I'll set the tone here because it's election season locally, and there are a lot of little campaign signs everywhere, so that's why they're on my mind. But anyway, I saw another sign, and it said, "Elect Linda Hodges." And I thought, I wonder if that's the Linda Hodges I went to school with. But then almost at the same time, it registered that the sign said Lincoln Hodges, not Linda Hodges. My brain had just pulled memory from the only Hodges I knew and completed the sign before it registered that reality was different, which made me wonder how many times I do that and don't even realize it. Once again, my perception and reality were totally different things. Now, these were harmless perceptions that even if I hadn't noticed actual reality was different, it wouldn't have made much difference. But how often do we have a perception that we swear is our reality and it really matters? It's important to remember that we come at life from our perspective and only our perspective. And from our perspective, life revolves around us. And we tend to think that everything other people do revolves around us as well. When in reality, that has the same chance of being true as someone putting a sign up in the yard specifically to motivate me to keep running. If your life revolves around you, and it does, then you can assume that the same goes for every other person in your life. And it does. I think this is one thing, if we remember, it'll help us tremendously in life and in our relationships. And there's nothing wrong with any of this. It's perfectly normal for us to think our lives revolve around us. It does. But what we want to do is we want to see and make sure we start seeing patterns or ways when we're doing that and it's not serving us, where we have perceptions and they're not serving us. It's really startling when you actually do a little research of how individualized each of our experiences is. Sometimes I'll be driving around and I see people in other cars and I think, wow, there are billions of people on the planet who wake up every day and live their life, and their life revolves around them just like mine does around me. So why does this even matter? Like, how does that affect you listening right now? Well, our stories and our perceptions are creating our life as we know it. They're the reason we do what we do. It also really affects our relationships with other people. I mean, our past experiences influence more than we even know. I was raised in a religion where other churches, they were actually the devil's house. And in our literature that they put out, preachers with long black coats and those little white collars were depicted with fire and anger and terrifying scenarios. My husband was taken back a few years ago when I told him that when I see a preacher wearing those outfits, even today, I still want to kind of step back or steer clear of them because we were raised to really fear those people. So a scenario that would normally be pretty comforting to a lot of people of seeing a preacher is actually very uncomfortable for me. I mean, we carry those ingrained experiences deeply. Some of them are very difficult to overcome, but they can be overcome, of course. But how does this affect our relationships with other people? Well, for one thing, we tend to think that what other people do or think is based on us, when often that couldn't be further from the truth. What another person does or thinks is based on their prior experience, not yours, not you. This even goes for your parents. I mean, your mom and dad have their own perceptions too. I've talked a lot about how I felt like my mom and dad were pulling away from me. When in reality, my mom just simply thought we were too busy for her and that we didn't have time for them. This couldn't have been further from the truth. We were both taking our perception and assigning it to reality, when reality was there was a lack of communication. And I'm open to that being mainly on my part. And a lot of that is because I had some pretty powerful coaching on the topic. I mean, our perception is our reality if we aren't open to the actual reality. My husband had a class where they were talking about aviation and behavior, and they did a survey where pilots were asked to rank themselves against their peers. Well, it turns out 90% of the pilots surveyed thought they were in the top 10% of their peer group. Now, this is where your perception can get you in trouble. Obviously, 90% of pilots are not in the top 10%. It's mathematically impossible. It's good to have confidence, but you don't want to have false confidence. Some of those pilots' perceptions may be a little off from actual reality. So how often is your perception off from actual reality? How often have you created an alternate reality from your perception? And how often does your perception include thinking you can read someone else's mind? How often does your perception influence your actions? Our perception influences our actions all the time. I mean, if we have a bad experience with a waiter at a restaurant, our perception of that restaurant is probably affected. It may even cause you not to return to that restaurant. I had food poisoning years ago at one of our favorite restaurants. It's been 3 years and we still haven't returned. That's pretty influential. Never underestimate the power of your perception and how it affects you. It affects everything you do. So my takeaway from this is recognize that your perception is strictly your reality and not necessarily actual reality, like my experience with being fearful of a robed preacher. Don't hold on too tightly to your perceptions either, because they may be wrong, like the way my brain was reading the signs. And always be open to modifying your perception if evidence shows otherwise, like me accepting my role in miscommunication with my family. Oftentimes, our perception is off. And the problem with that is that our perception will be our reality unless we're open to actual reality. So that question of the title of this podcast episode, is your perception really reality? Well, the answer is yes. Your perception is your reality, but it doesn't mean it's everyone's reality or even actual reality. And that's a pretty powerful way to become really self-aware. And that's what we want. I love you guys. I'll talk to you in a few days.
Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends, because we're just going to keep going bigger and better places together, and I love that about us. Talk to you in a few days.